Hello student, welcome you to Mohan Sir's classes. In this class we will learn about the dawn of modern culture in Europe and India, that is the early modern age, 1300 to 1800 CE or Common Era. This is the part 3 of this chapter. So in this chapter or in this class we are going to discuss about humanism in India. Humanism in India. Let us begin the class. Our first topic is humanism in India. We saw earlier that even in India, Sanskrit, Persian, Arabic and other classics were widely studied and translated. In the part 2 we have learned that humanism in Europe and how people learn about Greek and Latin classic and how it was benefited. But in this class we will discuss about humanism in India. So the paragraph begins like this. We saw earlier that in India, Sanskrit, Persian, Arabic and other classicals were widely studied and translated. So during this period in India also we have learned in the part 2 video clip or there we have learned that Sanskrit, Persian, Arabic and other classics were widely studied and translated in India. The Mughal emperors and even the minor kings encouraged such initiative. So who encouraged? The Mughal emperors and the minor kings. They encouraged such initiatives. This was the age when Munsis and Munims become the indispensable. That means during this period when this were 1300 to 1800 CE, this Munsis and Munmis become the important during this period in India. No ruler could administer his kingdom without these educated managers and accountants. That means the kings and monarch of these periods, without the help of these educated and accountants, who these Munsis and Munims. Without them, they could not administer or rule their country. They wrote many books about Mughal period. Who? These Munsis and Munims. They wrote many books about the Mughal period. Their analytical skills and descriptive powers are reflected in this treatise. So in this treatise, which treatise? The books which they had written. In that books, their analytical skills and descriptive powers are reflected. So in this paragraph, we learn that from the part 2 of this video clip, we have learned that Sanskrit, Persian and Arabic classics were widely studied and translated in India. And Mughal emperors and other small kings, they also encouraged for such initiative. And this was the time the Munsis and Munims become important. Without the help of this educated managers and accountant, no king could administer their kingdoms. And these Munsis and Munims, they wrote many books about the Mughal period, and in that book they have described or reflect their skills and descriptive powers. Next paragraph. The middle class during the Mughal period had one more striking feature. When we talk about the middle class during the Mughal period, there was a striking features about them. It represents a mix of Indian and Central Asian culture. This middle class during the Mughal period, they represent a mix Indian and Central Asian culture. Listen carefully. The middle class of the Mughal period, they represent mix of India and Central Asian culture. Next line. The people took inspiration from all these different sources. So, there was a striking features of the middle class during the Mughal period. They represent mixed Indian and Asian culture. And what happened? People took inspiration from all these different sources. This influenced the way they lived and the lifestyle they adopted. Because of this one, what happened? It influenced what? The way they lived and the lifestyle they adopted or followed. That was not all. Though they depend on emperors and king for their livelihood, they were proud of their independence, even criticizing them. So not only that one, but also what? Those peoples, they were living, they were depending upon their emperors for their livelihood. Even then, they were proud of their independence and even criticizing them. That means these middle class people, they used to depend upon the king for their livelihood. Even then, they were proud of their independence and they used to criticize against the emperor and the king. For example, many munsis even criticized Aurangzeb for his religious policy. If you take some of the example, that there were some munsis who criticized whom? Aurangzeb for his religious policy. So from this paragraph we will learn that during the middle class of the Mughal period, they had some striking features, special features. Why? Because they represented a mixed Indian and Central Asian culture, and that what happened took inspiration to the people of different sources, and these people influenced the way they lived and the lifestyle they adopted or they followed. And it was not at all. They also used to depend upon the emperors and kings for their livelihood. Then what happened? Even then they were proud of their independence and they used to criticize their kings. Even if you take the example of the munsis, they criticized the Aurangzeb's religious policies. Next paragraph. There was another significant difference between India and Europe. Listen carefully. There was one other significant difference between India and Europe. What is that? In Europe, the printing press was widely used to publish books and spread ideas. In Europe, what happened? They used printing press to They used printing press to what? For publishing the books and to spread the ideas. But in India, what happened? The uses of the new invention was next to negligible. That means this printing press was neglected to use in India, which hampered spread of new thinking. And because of that, what happened? There was a hindrance and difficulties for spreading this new thinking. So what you learn from this paragraph? There was a significant difference between India and Europe in the Middle Age. How in Europe people use press to publish the books and spread the ideas, but people of India, they neglected to use this print press, and because of that there was a what hampered or hindrance to spread the new thinking and new ideas in India. The Munsi and Munim. During Mughal times, these people worked in the ruler's courts and with merchants. So let us talk and discuss about this Munsi and Munim. Who are the Munsi and Munim? During the Mughal times, these people work in the ruler's court and with merchants. These people used to work during the Mughal periods. These people, which people? Munsi and Munim, they used to work in the king's court and with the merchants and businessmen. They performed administrative tasks such as correspondence, preparing legal documents, maintaining the books of account, writing about various events, etc. So why these people used to work, or they used to kept in king's court and with merchants? Because these peoples do the work or duty of what? Correspondence, preparing legal documents, maintaining the books of accounts, writing about various events. This was the duty of this Munsi and Munim. That's why they were kept in ruler's court or they used to work with merchants. They were familiar with the practice, customs and language of several countries. This Munsi and Munim, they were familiar with what? With the practice, customs and language of several countries. That means they knew several languages, the many languages of several countries, their culture, practice, custom, etc. Next paragraph. Around 1689, a writer from Chhattisgarh, Ratanpur Kingdom, wrote a satirical poem, Khub Tamasa. It was in the year of 1689. There was a writer from Chhattisgarh, Ratanpur area. He wrote a satirical or a comic poem, and the title of that comic poem was Khub Tamasa. And in which he poked fun at the kings and queens of Ratanpur and their divans. That means in that poem, that comic poem, Khub Tamasa, he poked or he mocked at whom? The kings, queens and the divans of the Ratanpur. His work clearly reflects mixed cultural influence. That means whose work? The writer of Chhattisgarh. The two words in the title are Persian origin. The two words in the title are Persian origin. That means the name of the title, which one? Khub Tamasa. It is a Persian origin. So in this paragraph we learn that around in the year of 1689 there was a writer from Chhattisgarh, and he wrote a comic poem about Khub Tamasa, in which he wrote about kings, queens and divans of Ratanpur, and his work is clearly reflect about mixed culture, and he used two words for the title. What are that? Khub Tamasa. It is a Persian language or Persian words. Next topic, a new artistic trends. One other change in India and several other countries was the flowering of the creative arts after 1300 CE. So when we talk and discuss about India and other countries, so there was other change in 13th century was the flowering of the creativity of arts. After 13th century or after 13th century, India and other countries there was a changes, and that was the flowering of the creativity of arts in several countries. The most visible impact of this new wave of creativity was seen in architecture. So if you want to see the most impact of this new wave of creativity, so we can see in architecture or in art. When the Turks came to India, they brought with them new building techniques. Listen carefully. When the Turk came to India, they brought with them what? A new building techniques, such as the use of domes and arcs. What were the techniques? Domes and arcs. This techniques of using domes and arcs in building was the first development in ancient Greece and Rome. That means this technique, which techniques? That making of domes and arcs, it was first developed in ancient Greek and Rome. So in this paragraph we learn that one of the other changes in India and several countries are the flowering of creativity arts, that is in 13th century. The most invisible impact of this new wave creativity was seen in the architecture. As we know that when Turks came to India, they brought with them new building techniques. Which are the techniques? Like domes and arcs. These are the two new techniques brought by Turks when they came to India. And this technique used domes and arcs buildings was first developed in ancient Greeks and Rome. Listen carefully. These techniques. Which techniques? Using of domes and arcs was first established in ancient Greek and Rome. Next paragraph. Figure 6.3 show pillars supporting the weight of the roof of a Greek temple. Figure 6.3. this one. It shows that pillars. What is pillars? That means this one, this straight line. These are the pillars. It shows that how pillars supporting the weight of the roof. This is the roof. This is the roof, and this roof is supported by whom? By the pillars. Where? It is the Greek temple. It is of the Greek temple. Listen carefully. This pillar 6.3. It shows a pillar supporting the roof of the Greek temple. Next sentence. In India, two pillars and beams were used to support the roofs. Not only in Greek but also in India, pillars and beams were used to support the roof. Massive temples were built in India using pillars and horizontal beams. In India, a huge temples were built by using the pillars. Listen, what are the pillars? You look at this picture, this figure 6.3. These are the pillars. These are the pillars. Such kinds of pillars are huge pillars, and they also what use beam or horizontal beams. What is horizontal? That means this one, this straight line. So such kinds of beams were used for making the buildings. You can see an example of in figure 6.4. Look at this, okay, figure 6.4 of Kandriya Mahadev temple in Khajuraho, which was built about 1000 years ago. So this is which one? This figure 6.4 is one of the example of Kandriya Mahadev temple, Khajuraho. It was built almost 1000 years ago. This splendid example of temple architecture combined hundreds of small shikharas or spires to form an impressive edifice. That means this splendid example, that means this beautiful example of temple architecture or art, it is what? A combined hundreds of small shikharas. What is shikharas? The top. Look at, okay, how many tops are there? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, and you see here, okay, there are several other tops are there. So that's why it says that this splendid or beautiful example of architecture combined hundreds of small shikharas or spires. That means this top to form an impressive edifice. That means to make an impressive, they have, okay, used hundreds of shikhara. So in this paragraph we learn that figure 6.3 shows that pillars supporting the weight of a roof in a Greek temple. This one. India also used pillars and beam for supporting the roof. Big and huge temples were built in India using what? A horizontal beams, pillars and horizontal beams. So we can take an example from figure 6.4 that Kandriya Mahadev temple in Khajuraho, which was built about 1000 years ago, and in this temple we can see 100 of what? Shikharas or the top of the temple to modify or to beautify they have used. Next paragraph. In Northern Europe, churches with similar complex structures were built during 12th century. In this paragraph it says that in the Northern Europe, churches used similar complex structure in 12th century. One excellent example, the famed Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, which is shown in figure 6.5. Look at figure 6.5. What is that? The Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, that is in France. So this architectural style is called what? Gothic style. This architectural style is called what? Gothic style. So in this paragraph it says that in North Europe, church used the similar complex of architecture during 12th century, and one of the living example is that this one, the Notre Dame Cathedral Church in Paris. And these types of architectural style is called what? Gothic style. Next paragraph, figure 6.6 also show arches used in the Roman Empire 2000 years ago to support the weight of the roof of structure. where this figure 6.6, a Roman arch. So it says that arcs used in the Roman Empire when 2000 years ago to support the weight of the roof structure. Arcs are used in constructing domes as well. For constructing domes also arcs were used. So what happened? In Roman Empire 2000 years ago they used these arcs to support the structure of a roof. Next paragraph. One example in the dome of the Pantheon, that means figure 6.7. This one built 2000 years ago in Rome. This is the what living example of dome. What is dome? You see, look at the structure. This is called what? Dome. So it was built almost 2000 years ago in Rome. It looks absolutely grand when seen from the inside, but it is not an impressive when you see from outside. When we are seeing from the inside, it looks what? Grand. But when we'll see from the outside, it is not that much impressive. Next paragraph. Domes that look impressive externally were the combination of Islamic architecture. That means the previous this one we saw that the dome circle looks impressive from inside, but here you see the dome look impressive outside. It looks impressive outside. It is the contribution of Islamic architecture. Who contributed? Islamic people. See figure 6.9. That means this figure which shows the dome of the rock built in Jerusalem in 691 CE. This is what? The dome of the rock. That means Jerusalem. It was built in the year of 691 CE or Common Era. We can see how grand the dome looks above an equally impressive base composed of beautiful arranged arcs. So look at these domes. It looks what? Equally impressive, and how grand or how big this one, and looks it's beautiful. In India, the use of domes and arcs made a very attractive mix with elements of temple architecture in the modern period. That means in India also what? The domes and arcs made attractive mix. How? They use for temple architecture in the early modern period. That means in the early modern period in India, they used these domes and arcs for temple architecture. As a result, this fusion, a new and transfer of Indian architecture took shape during this period. What happened? Because of the result of this fusion, what is fusion? Mix. A new and transferred Indian architecture took shape during this period. Because of this Indian architecture using of domes and arcs of this Rome and Jerusalem, etc. So they got a fusion architecture which both Hindu and Muslim rulers adopted. This fusion or mixed architecture was adopted by both Hindu and Muslim rulers. So in this paragraph we learn that India also used domes and arcs to make attractive in the temple architecture in the early modern period. Because of that reason, there was a new transport of Indian architecture took shape during this period, and which was used by both Hindu and Muslim rulers. Next paragraph, we can see example of this architectural form in India, the Lotus Mahal of Vijayanagar. So we can see an example of this architectural form in India, where the Lotus Mahal in Vijayanagar. Look at this image. This is the Lotus Mahal of Vijayanagar, the place of Fatehpur Sikri and so on. So these are the what? Some of the example of architecture of India. The domes and arcs of Taj Mahal. You can see, this one. the domes and arch of Taj Mahal, that means 1648 CE, beautifully incorporated Indian design and engraving. For example, the inverted lotus crowning, the dome, and the brass finally emanating from it in figure 6.10. Listen carefully. That means in India also they have used these domes and arcs to construct and build temples and etc. So we can see the example, the Indian structure, architectural example of this Lotus Mahal of Vijayanagar and the Taj Mahal. How beautifully they have used. It says that the dome is shaped beautifully round like a teardrop. Look at this one. It looks like round like a teardrop. So in this paragraph, what you learn that in India also we have several architectural examples. So one of the example is that Lotus Mahal of Vijayanagar, and other is what? This Taj Mahal. So the dome which is used in our architect in Taj Mahal is looks like a tree drop. It is a tea drop. Next paragraph. Thus, the architectural journey of domes and arcs began in the ancient Roman Empire. So what we come to know that the architectural journey of domes and arcs, where it began? It began in ancient Roman Empire. They were almost forgotten by Western Europe of Middle Ages, but Western Europe Middle Ages they almost forgot about what? About the domes and arcs. Then they began to be used extensively in the Islamic countries and India. Listen carefully. This architectural journey of domes and arcs began in the ancient Roman Empire. But later what happened? In the Western Europe, they almost forgot about this domes and arcs. They almost forgot about the domes and arcs. But what happened? These domes and arcs mostly and extensively used in Islamic countries and India, though it was begun and started from the Roman Empire, but for some time they forgot. But the countries like India and other Islamic countries, they mostly use these domes and arcs. In the process, they took a new forms and styles. Who? In the process, Islamic countries and India, they took a new forms and styles. In Europe, interest in ancient Greek and Roman culture was revived in 14th century. What happened? In Europe, this interest in Greek and Roman culture was revived only in the 14th century, beginning with Italy. It was started from the Italy. Next, architect began using domes and arcs once again. Again, the European people, they start using or they revive the using of Greek and Roman culture during 14th century, and it was started from Italy. And then what happened? The architectures, they start using domes and arcs once again. The style they adopted was developed by Islamic architecture, but during the 14th century when they revived, who? The European people, but that was adopted by the Islamic architecture. When Michelangelo designed the St. Peter's Cathedral in 1547 CE, he took inspiration from the Greek temples and Roman and Islamic domes. So look at this figure 6.11. It says that when Michelangelo, one of the greatest artists of the world, when he designed the St. Peter's Cathedral Church in 1547, so he was inspired by whom? From the Greek temples, Roman and Islamic domes. So in this paragraph we learn that architectural journey was developed or started from the ancient Roman Empire. That means the use of domes and arcs. But what happened? Almost they forgot. Where? In the east of Europe in the Middle Ages. But what happened in that time? Islamic countries and India, they used extensively these domes and arcs. And in this process, the Islamic countries and India, they took on a new form of style. Then what happened in Europe? During the 14th century, the revival of using this Greek and Roman culture, beginning with Italy. Next, architecture start using domes and arcs once again, and the style they adopt was developed by the Islamic architecture. If you see an example of Michelangelo, who designed the St. Peter's Cathedral in the year of 1547, so he was inspired by the Greek temples, Roman and Islamic domes. This architectural style, which the tall Greek columns, arcs and domes are used, is called what? Classical style. Listen carefully. This architectural style, which one? That is tall Greek columns, arcs and domes. So these styles are used of these things are called what? Classical style. It continues to be used even today. Even now also it has been or it is being used. Listen carefully. This architectural style, that means using of Greek columns, arcs and domes, are called classical style, and that are today also being used. Our next topic is printing and sculpture. Printing and sculpture. The Renaissance is most renowned for its magnificent painting and sculpture. So when we talk about the Renaissance, so it is what? Renowned for magnificent painting and sculpture. In Europe of the Middle Ages, painting had limited scope, restricted to biblical figures as seen in figure 6.12. That means in European country what happened? The painting was limited scope. There was no much scopes. It was limited, and it was restricted to only biblical figures. That means only biblical images were drawn in Europe. This began changing towards the end of 13th century, but towards the end of 13th century it began to change when artists began painting based on their observation of real humans. When artists began painting based on their observation of the real humans. Listen carefully. So during the times of Renaissance, what happened? The most renowned for its magnificent painting and sculpture. In Europe of the Middle Ages, painting had limited scope, and it was restricted to what? Only biblical figures. That means in those days only biblical figures were painted. Next, what happened? Things began to changing toward the end of 13th century. That means the artists, they began to paint about the observation of the real humans and real human life. Next paragraph. Religious figures continued to be dominant, but the elite and rich successful professionals began to get their portraits painted. So till the 13th century, what happened? People or the artisan used to draw or paint only the religious figure or religious picture. But what happened? At last, the successful, the rich people, elite people, rich people or successful professionals, they also began to portrait they began to portrait. Listen carefully. Initially only religious figures were painted, but later elite, rich and successful professional person, they also began to paint their portrait. Next, even the religious figure become more lifelike, depicting different emotion, forms and perspective. That means whatever the religious figure become, all the religious figures become more lifelike. How? They used to depict different emotion, forms and perspective. As they used to draw this image religious figures, they used to depict like a real life. How? They used to depict like a different emotion, forms and perspective. That means earlier only religious figures were painted, but later what happened? The rich and elite class people, they also painted their portrait, and the religious figure seems like a it has become more life. How? They used to depict like different emotion, forms and perspective. Next is colors, techniques and science. Color, techniques and science. With new colors being introduced from India and Iran, artists began experimenting with color and methods. What happened? New colors being introduced from India and Iran. Thereafter, what happened? Artists began experimenting with colors and methods. Thereafter, artists start drawing or painting by using different colors and methods. They also used new oil-based colors. That means the artists of India and Iran, they also used new oil-based color. That means oil color. They mixed colors to get innumerable shades. That means they mixed different colors. They mixed different colors and get what? A numbers of shades. Their painting also became more realistic as they began depicting perfect reflex of what they saw. What happened? Their painting also became what? More realistic. How? They began depicting perfect replica as they saw. As they saw, seems like that they used to draw the paint. This became possible with an understanding of perspective. So how it become possible? It is through what? Understanding of perspective. When we look at a scene, objects that are close look bigger, while objects that are far away look small. That means if you are looking a scene or an image or a photo, so when we see an object or an image in a photo, if it is close, then looks bigger. If it is far away, it looks smaller. We know that one. So object in the background becomes smaller in geometrical proportion. That means when they used to draw the picture and image, so if there is a things which is far or the background image, it becomes smaller. Why? To make the distance. Calculating proportion help artists to separate near and distant object in there. That means by calculating the proportion, it help artists to what? Separate the near and distant object in they used. So what happened? In this paragraph we learn that colors also being introduced by the Indian and Iran artists by experimenting with different colors and methods. They also used what? Oil-based colors. By mixing these colors, they used to get numbers of shades. And what happened? When they use the colors, the painting become what? More realistic, and they used to depict the real life. This become possible with the understanding of perspective. Example, okay, when you look at a scene, so object which is close to us, it will become very big, and which is which is far away, it looks small. So what happened? The object in the background, they used to make what? Small according to the geometric proportion. So one of the famous example is seen in the painting figure 6.3. Look at this painting figure 6.13. So here it gives the perfect example. How? By the famous artist Raphael. Who has drawn this image? Famous artist Raphael. We can distinguish close from far by seeing all small human figures in the distance, while figure in the foreground are bigger. We can see the lines here. So look at this figure. That means it is not that a photo taken by camera, it is what? A handmade portrait, or it is a art. You see that the things you see this image or these people, they looks very small. Why? Because they are far away from these people. As they are far away or in a distance, that's why the artists they have make small. And listen, look at these people now. These people. So these people are look little bit bigger than the people those who are backside. Why? Because these people are little closer. That's why they have increased the size of image. And now look at this image. See how big or in size, because what? The people are very close to them. So in this way the artist used to draw the image according to the geometric proportion. So this what? The Marriage of the Virgin, painted by the Raphael around 1500. It was a marriage ceremony. Understood? In this way, that means making the image far and distance and making close, they used to give the word geometric proportion. Another technique emerged from science which has developed rapidly during this period. What happened? One more technique was developed from science, and it developed rapidly during this period. The physician Andreas Vesalius, he dissected human cadavers. What dissected? Cut into pieces. Cadavers, that means okay, what? Dead body of human, to study the structure of bones, muscles and other internal organs, and published books on his findings. What happened? There was a new technique emerged during this period. It is related to science. What is that? There was a physician or a doctor, his name was what? Andreas Vesalius. What he did? He dissected human cadavers. That means he cut into pieces the human body for what? To study the structure of bones, muscles and other internal organs, and he wanted to publish in a book. Next, what happened? Artists could now study human anatomy to perfect their human figures. Now artists, they could study human anatomy to perfect their human figures. Many of them even dissected human bodies to get better idea of the internal structure. Many of the artists, they dissected human bodies. They cut human body into different pieces to get the better idea about the internal structure. The most famous among them was Leonardo da Vinci. So Leonardo da Vinci was the famous artist who dissected the cadavers or the human body to study about that. If you read history, it is said that he used to go and spend time in the graveyards during the night time. He used to dig out the dead body and he used to cut into pieces and he used to study about that. Next is that two important painters. Italian had many great painters during the Renaissance period, but we shall discuss the two most important among them. In Italy, there were many great painters were there during the Renaissance period, but we are going to discuss about two important painters. The first one was Leonardo da Vinci and second is Michelangelo. First one was Leonardo da Vinci, second is Michelangelo. Next paragraph. Da Vinci was a scientist, sculptor, architect, inventor and painter. Leonardo da Vinci, he was a scientist, sculptor, architect, inventor and painter. He was the perfect example of the Renaissance man, with his many-sided personality and wide range of interest. So, he was the perfect example of Renaissance man. He has what? Many-sided personality and wide range of interest. Listen carefully. His most widely discussed painting is the Mona Lisa. He had drawn a painting. The name of the painting is Mona Lisa, and you can see this is the figure of Mona Lisa. It depicts a woman with captivating smile. You see a woman with a captivating smile. Scholars have tried decipher the mystery of her smile for the past 500 years. For past 500 years, many of the scholars are trying to find out what is the mystery or secret behind her smile. In a way, it was symbolic of that age. But if you talk about that, it is a symbolic of that age. Never before had any artist given such prominence to a momentary and fleeting facial expression, capturing for its eternity in a painting. That means till that time, that means till Renaissance period, no artist has given such a beautiful and prominent momentary fleeting facial expression which was capturing for its eternity in a painting. which had drawn by whom? Leonardo da Vinci. So still now there is no person could find out, or no scholars could identify what is the secret or reason behind the smile of this Mona Lisa. So in this paragraph we will learn that Leonardo da Vinci, he was a scientist, sculptor, architect, inventor and painter. Also we can say he was a doctor, and he has many doctors degree, and it is not mentioned in the textbook, but we know that he was a multi-talented person. Even he was expert in mirror writing. That means to sometime he used to write in mirror writing, and to read that one we can read through the mirror only. That means if we keep the writing before the mirror, then only we can read. Like we know sometime we see in the ambulance, read the ambulance, so that we read through the mirror. Seems like that he has the talent of mirror writing. And also history says that he used to write at a time by two hands, both right and left hand. He used to write at a time or simultaneously. And as I said earlier that he has studied the human body. That means what about the scientist and computer science now teaching us about the human body, human part, internal organs, everything he has studied. He used to go to the graveyard, he used to dig out the dead body, he used to cut into pieces, and he has studied all these things. Whatever image and picture he had drawn about the human internal organs, the same things we can study from the skeleton of the human body now. It is also said that the flight or the aeroplane which we saw or we seen today, that also the idea and image was drawn by Leonardo da Vinci earlier. And he had drawn an image called Mona Lisa, and it is this image depicts about a woman with a captivating smile. And scholars have tried to identify for the first 5 years to know the reason behind the smile, but nobody could understand. And it says that it is a symbolic of that age. And so far till the Renaissance, no artist could give such kinds of portrait with a prominence, momentary fleeting of social expression, and capturing eternity in the painting. And many of the scholars says that there are almost 19 reasons behind this Mona Lisa's painting. Next paragraph. Michelangelo is counted among the most prominent artists in the world. Michelangelo is counted as most prominent artist in the world. He lived in the city of Florence. Where he lived? He lived in a city of Florence. He was under the patronage of the Pope, for whom he undertook many creative projects. That means he used to work under the Pope, and he had undertook many creative projects, or he had drawn many creative projects. The most illustrious of these paintings scenes from the Bible on the wall and the roof of Sistine Chapel. So if you take the most illustrious example of Michelangelo, that is the painting scene from the Bible on the wall and roof of the Sistine Chapel. We can see a proportion of one of the painting in figure 6.15. From this painting we can see only one scene of the chapel. There he had drawn several images and portraits, but it is one of the example of that Sistine Chapel. Figure 6.15 says that the creation of the sun, moon and vegetation. That means God created, according to Christian religion, God created the sun, the moon and vegetation. One of the biblical scenes painted by Michelangelo on the roof of the Sistine Chapel. See, it is one of there are several biblical scenes, but he has shown one biblical scene. The intensity of the creation is reflected in his facial expression. You see, in the facial expression, the intensity of creation is expressed. And self gaze which dazzle when the angels, even there was a self gaze or dazzle which you see, look at the angels, they also gazed at that. So in this paragraph we learn that Michelangelo is counted as the most prominent artist in the world. He lived in Florence and he used to work under the Pope, and he overtook many projects. So one of the most illustration was that the painting Scene of Bible, which was portrayed on the roof of Sistine Chapel. Next paragraph, Michelangelo was a good sculptor as he was a painter. Michelangelo, he was a good sculptor as he was a good painter. He used Italy's white marble to sculpt extraordinary figures. Michelangelo, he used what? Italy's white marble to sculpt extraordinary figures. Take a look at the most famous among them was La Pieta. This one. This is the La Pieta. So he has used white marble to sculpt extraordinary figures. And this was one of the example of the Michelangelo. Name of the figure is called what? La Pieta. The portrayal of the human body. So here he has depicted the portrayal of the human body. Where? In this. Emotion and even clothes is spectacularly realistic. Look at this emotion and the cloth. It seems to what? A realistic. The grief of the mother with the dead body of the son on her lap is deeply and profoundly etched. You see, the grief or sorrowfulness of a mother, because the dead body of her son is laying on her lap. The dead body of her son is laying on her lap is profoundly what? Etched. Look at this expression, how sorrow, and see the cloth in this image 6.16, and you can understand how it is realistic. So in this paragraph we learn that Michelangelo, he was a good sculptor as a good painter. He used Italian's white marble to sculpt extraordinary figures. If you take the example of this La Pieta, this one, here he has portrayed the human body with the emotion, and the cloth is exactly realistic. And also he has shown or depict the grief of the mother with the dead body of her son is lying on her lap. Next paragraph, much of Renaissance art was inspired by Christianity. So when you talk about the almost all this art of Renaissance, it was inspired by whom? By the Christianity. But at the same time, we see the marked influence of ancient Roman art. In same time, what happened? We can see that it was influenced by the ancient Roman art also. Artists like Michelangelo studied ancient painting, sculptures, and buildings in a minute detail and tried to replicate their style. That means there were some artists like Michelangelo. They used to study the ancient paintings, sculpture, and buildings, and they used to detail it within a minute. All they used to give the details of the style within a minute. Next topic, early modern painting in India. Early modern painting in India. A new chapter opened in India painting in the 15th century. The year of 15th century, there was a new chapter of Indian painting began. This was the age of miniature painting, in which bright colors were used in paint pictures on paper. That means during this 15th century, what happened? Miniature painting or small paintings were drawn by using bright colors, and the picture used to painted on the paper. This miniature had two sources of inspiration. This miniature has two sources of inspiration. One was the simple illustration on palm leaf handwritten books. One is that what? Simple illustration. That means they used to write on palm leaf and handwritten books. Using deep and bright colors, they depict idealized, not realistic human and animal figures. That means they used to what? Use the bright colors, and they depict the idealized, not the realistic, but the imaginary what? Human and animal figures. We can see from the figure 6.8. This one. What is 6.8? an illustration in the Gujarati Jain manuscript from 14th century. It is an illustration of Gujarati Jain manuscript which was drawn in 14th century. The Father Lord Mahavira is seen talking to some person. Here in this image, Father Lord Mahavira, seen that he is talking to some person. Examine the colors used and how human figures are depicted. Look at this image and look at the color, how the human figures are depicted. That means what happened? In the 15th century, there was a new chapter opened in Indian painting. That means what? Miniature painting with bright colors. A small image, they used a bright color to paint on the paper. And what happened? This miniature, the small images were has two sources of or inspiration. The first one that they used to illustrate on the palm leaf and the by handwritten. You see, this is the example of palm leaf and which is written through the hand. Next, using deep and bright colors, they used to use deep and bright color to depict not the realistic but the idealist human and animal figures, which we can see the example of this image. And the second source of inspiration was the miniature of tradition of Iran. Listen, what was the first illustration? That means they used the palm leaf and they used to depict the human figures through the deep and bright colors by handwritten in a palm leaf. Second thing is that inspiration was the miniature tradition of the Iran. The country had practice of producing books handwritten on paper with illustration of the incidents described in them. That means this tradition of Iran, they used to practice producing books in handwritten on the paper and they used to illustrate incidents described in them. Listen carefully. Second thing is that the miniature tradition of Iran. According to the miniature tradition of Iran, people used to produce book by handwritten on a paper and they used to illustrate them in them. This was around the time of Renaissance began in Europe. So when it began, the time of Renaissance, it began in Europe. The most famous Iranian painter was Kamaluddin Behzad. The most famous Iranian painter in that time was Kamaluddin Behzad. One of his painting is shown figure 6.9. Look at this figure 6.9. When the Mughal dynasty was established in India. So it was when the Mughal dynasty was established in India. The emperors invited many Iranian artists to the country. During this Mughal dynasty, what happened? Many emperors and many kings, they invited many artisans from the Iran. Traditional India painters who were skilled in using a wide range of bright colors in their paintings worked with these Iranian artists and gathered they produced a wonderful new tradition of painting called Mughal miniature painting. Listen carefully. Traditional Indian painters who were skilled in using wide range bright colors. That means during that time, the traditional art painters who were using the bright colors in their painting work with this Iranian artist. Listen carefully. During the Mughal dynasty, the Mughal emperors, they invited many Iran artists to India. And in that time, what happened? The traditional Indian painters, those who are very skilled in using bright colors, they work with the artists of Iran, and together they produced a real wonderful new tradition. That means the Iranian artists who were invited by the Mughal emperors and the Indian artists, those who were expert in using bright colors, they both worked together and they produced a wonderful new tradition of painting, and that painting was called what? Mughal miniature painting. That painting is called what? Mughal miniature painting. Figure 6.20 is a painting done by Miskin. Look at this figure 6.20. It was drawn by a painter called what? Miskin. a Mughal court painter during the reign of Akbar. So this Miskin was a Mughal court painter in the reign or the ruling of Akbar. This painting depicts a scene from the Mahabharata and its appendix Harivansh. So this scene is taken from where? From the Mahabharata. So here what happened? Sri Krishna is seen lifting the Govardhan hill. In this image or pic we can see that Lord Sri Krishna, he is lifting up the Govardhan hill. Then what happened? The cows and the herders and other people are sheltering beneath. When he lifted up the Govardhan hill, cows and other their herders and other people, they took rest under the mountain or hill. This complex composition has many distinct individual figures. Listen, this complex composition what? Many distinct individual figures. You look at this image, here we can see what a different what peoples are there in different expression. These people are not victorious warriors or rich merchants but ordinary village folk. That means who? These are not victor warriors. They are not victorious warriors or merchants, but what happened? Ordinary village folk. Now look at the painting in the figure 6.21. 6.21. It was done by a painter called Vichitra. This painting, which painting? This painting was drawn by whom? There was a painter called Vichitra around 1620 during the reign of Emperor Jahangir. During the Emperor Jahangir in the year of 1620, Vichitra had drawn this image. It is a symbolic painting that depicts the emperor's spiritual learning. So from this image we will learn that it is what? A symbolic painting. It gives message that the spiritual learning of Jahangir. Jahangir is shown sitting on an hourglass throne. You see, he is sitting on hourglass throne, depicting the flow of time. That means it speak about those days time. Listen carefully. There was another artisan or the painter. His name was Vichitra during the time of Jahangir. So in the figure 6.21, he has depicted that how Jahangir is sitting and learning the spiritual things, and he is sitting on a hourglass throne, which is depict the flow of that time or those days culture. A sun-like halo crowns him. Look at, okay, a sun-like halo crowns him. Next, with European style angels on both sides. Look at here, okay, here angels are both sides. You see, both sides we can see angels. It is European style. Jahangir is presenting a book to a Sufi saint. Look at this image. Jahangir is presenting a book to whom? A Sufi saint. Next, the Ottoman Sultan, the King of England and Vichitra himself are shown standing nearby. Who are that? Ottoman Sultan, King of England and Vichitra. Look at this image. This is a Sufi Sultan. Next, what is mentioned that? Ottoman Sultan, King of England and Vichitra. This is Sufi saint, this is Ottoman Sultan, this is King of England and this is Vichitra. All are what? Standing. That is shown in this painting. In this painting, Jahangir wants to show himself as an emperor who has mastered time and who cares for religious leaders more than emperors and kings. So through this image or a picture, what you learn that Jahangir wanted to show himself as an emperor who has mastered time and who cares for the religious leaders more than the kings and emperor. Despite the exaggeration and symbols used in this painting, Vichitra still depict human figures realistically, giving each of them a distinct and individual look. So look at this image here. What happened? Vichitra tried to give the different human figure in different way or different style as a realistic. So from this paragraph, what to learn that Miss Vichitra, he has depict of the Jahangir image, and here okay he want to inform that how Jahangir wanted to learn the spiritual things, and it is says that Jahangir is presenting a book to Sufficient, and he is sitting on a hourglass, and a sunlight halo crowns him, and two angels are beside. It was an European style, and it is says that there was okay three person like a Ottoman Sultan, King of England, and Vichitra were standing nearby him. So through this image, the painter or Vichitra wanted to give message that emperor okay he was mastered. He cares more religions leaders more than the emperors. And here Vichitra also what he depict the human figure realistically with the different emotion and different individual in different way. Hope all of you understood. The rest of the section of this chapter we will study in part 3 of the video clip, and we will bind up this chapter.